President Trump hospitalized for coronavirus, the latest on his condition, and what it means for the election, now less than 1 month away. New York City once again shutting down neighborhoods because of rising COVID cases, and the SNL season premiere. Here's what you need to know. Good morning. This is Cheddar's Need2Know podcast for Monday, October 5th. I am Jill Wagner with Carlo Bersano. Hey, good morning, Carlo.
Good morning, Jill. How was your weekend?
It was good. How was yours?
Yeah, it was, relaxing, just refreshing my phone to see who's in charge of the United States nuclear arsenal like everyone else. No biggie.
It's just an insane.
It's insane,
It's the
Jill. It's just
craziest
insane.
news week. I feel like it's been the craziest few days of news in the craziest year of news, like in the craziest 4 years of news. If that makes any sense.
I don't know how else to put it. It is just it's just mind-boggling what's happening right now.
All right, let's get to it. President Trump remains in the hospital this morning. He was airlifted from the White House to Walter Reed on Friday afternoon after his condition reportedly had deteriorated. A weekend of confusion and conflicting reports about President Trump's health ended with the president taking a surprise car ride to wave at supporters outside of the hospital. His doctors say that his condition has improved. He could be released as early as today. They also revealed, though, that his blood oxygen levels had dropped twice and that he was taking steroids, which are typically only given to COVID patients who are seriously ill and on oxygen. He's also taking remdesivir, which is a drug proven to cut the length of illness in many patients. And he's on an experimental antibody cocktail from the drug maker Regeneron.
Which certainly suggests that he's sicker than they're telling us, right? I mean, at the same time, he's clearly able to be up and walking around, which is good news. I think that car ride last night was probably that was pretty risky. I mean, it was certainly risky for the Secret Service agents who had to get in the car with him. But I guess the upshot is that it's showing that he's not seriously ill. But at the same time, Jill, the fact that they're pumping him with these three different drugs is a little bit worrisome. I mean, dexamethasone, which is that steroid that you mentioned, it's first of all, it's known to help people who are seriously ill, like you said, but it's also known to have really bad side effects. If you just search on Google, like dexamethasone, patient side effects, people talk about how it almost feels like this like psychosis, like it really hurts your brain and sort of like your decision-making capabilities. So I don't know what to make of that. The problem is you can't believe a word any of these people say, which is a problem, right? And it's their duty to tell us the condition of the president of the United States, who, of course, once again, we must remember, works for us, works for the American people. The president's doctor deceived the American public about his health on Saturday, specifically about that question about whether he had to take supplemental oxygen, which they didn't tell us until last night. It's just, I know I'm like a broken record, but the incompetence is just like staggering. I just imagine if Joe Biden had to be hospitalized and they were covering up his condition. Like, people would be furious about that, and I think that people are furious about what's happening with the president. I mean, I wish him well, and it certainly seems like he's on the mend, but we just don't know, and that's a real problem.
I mean, the question here is also, when did the president first get sick? Because we know this virus moves slowly, and it takes usually about 10 days or so until somebody actually needs to be hospitalized. So if this White House timeline is accurate, the president's illness moved quite quickly. With his first positive test Thursday, which is what they're saying. He was then hospitalized Friday. So you could argue he's the president of the United States, so they're not going to take chances. They're getting him straight to the hospital. But on the contrary, he is the president of the United States, who's notoriously, he hates hospitals, and he could get pretty good treatment at the White House itself. Why this matters is because that time period, while he was potentially sick, he may have exposed a lot of people. And the whole idea of the past 6 months has been, if you think you're sick, isolate yourself, get a test, isolate, quarantine. And on that note, Chris Christie, the former governor of New Jersey, he helped the president prep for Tuesday's debate. He now has COVID. He is in the hospital. This is reportedly a precaution because he has asthma. But he was also at the White House ceremony to nominate Amy Coney Barrett. Now, this appears to have been potentially a super spreader event for the U.S. government. At least 7 people who were in attendance at that September 26th event have tested positive, including the president. Photos taken during a receiving line for Barrett inside of the White House and video of the Rose Garden ceremony show attendees mostly maskless, hugging, glad handing. So,
have you seen those videos?
There you go. I have.
Those videos, Jill, when I looked at them, laughing and hugging, some of them were even kissing on the cheek. None of them were wearing masks, or at least almost none of them. It really it angered me. It really angered me, and I don't want to get all worked up this morning. But we're going on 8 months here, folks. Not seeing friends, family members, making all of these sacrifices every day that you, Jill, so eloquently talked about last week. Everyone is ready to just fall apart here. And then you have these pictures of our government, that just sort of, it's like the perfect distillation of the failed response. It's like the rules don't apply to them. And yes, I know that all of these people got tested before this White House event, but clearly that didn't really work out, right? Because somebody there was clearly shedding the coronavirus and giving it to a lot of other people. And again, back to what you were saying about the timeline, I still can't really make sense of the timeline, right? Because it sure seems like President Trump knew he was positive by Thursday morning and went to a rally in Minnesota and then a fundraiser in New Jersey at his club in Bedminster, putting Lord knows how many people at risk. Actually, we know how many people. I think they say there were 200 people at that fundraiser who they're now trying to contact trace. But not just the people who pay $250,000 to have a buffet lunch with the president and then potentially get COVID. But the waiters, right, the staff, the drivers, the Secret Service. Think about all those people who didn't really have much of a choice in the matter. There's also talk, and we don't know if this is true or not, that he may have actually been positive before the debate, and they didn't tell anybody. We just don't know, right? They haven't said. But we should say that Joe Biden's camp did say yesterday that he has tested negative again. So that at least is some good news in all this.
Right. Well, Chris Wallace had said that that the president didn't get there early enough for the debate to be tested, so it was kind of just an honor code.
Yeah.
That that he said, okay, that you've recently got tested and you're negative. Meanwhile, his hospitalization, though, has thrown not just the election, but also the Supreme Court nomination into a bit of turmoil. So the vice presidential debate, that is still on for Wednesday. But next weekend's second presidential debate, certainly up in the air. Mitch McConnell has delayed the Senate's return by 2 weeks after 3 Republican senators tested positive, including 2 on the Judiciary Committee. But McConnell's still planning to hold confirmation hearings for Amy Coney Barrett on October 12th, which by my count is 7 days away, 8 days?
I don't know how they're going to pull this off.
I'm not good at math, but that seems awfully soon.
It's next Monday they're planning to hold the confirmation hearings. I don't know how they're going to do this, if it's going to be virtual. The Senate requires all members to be there in person to vote, which could put a kink in those plans if this outbreak on Capitol Hill, which is really what this is now, a outbreak in the U.S. government at the highest levels of the U.S. government. So if that continues to spread, I don't know how they're going to do this. If the confirmation were today, they wouldn't have the votes, right? McConnell wouldn't have 51 senators there to vote. So this is going to be a real question this week, how they think they're going to be able to pull this off. I mean, it was wild to try and pull this off before all of this, right? Just in these waning days of the election. But meanwhile, Jill, the latest national poll from NBC News, Wall Street Journal has Joe Biden extending his lead over President Trump to 14 points. That poll was taken after the first debate. I think it was taken before the president's COVID diagnosis was made public. Look, I'm calling it now, and I know that I'm going to say something that is in direct conflict with what you and JD predicted on our special podcast last, whenever that was, Thursday. I think that
so much has happened since then.
I know,
how
right?
Was that only last Thursday?
Oh my God! But I think Trump loses. it's over for him. I think that this is the end of any chance that he had of mounting a comeback. I just don't see. I don't see. I mean, again, I should say, knowing, don't take anything I say to the bank. But I think that I just don't see how he makes up the differential in this with these couple weeks left.
I don't know, Carlo. I'm not going to make any predictions here because I
I
think
know.
this
Well, let's
thing
mark the
is
time.
just so crazy. All
I
right,
know.
your
It's
call here, JD.
October 5th, 6:30 a.m. I'm
I
calling
thought
it for Biden.
JD's insight, for anybody though who has not listened to that podcast, I thought JD's insight was just so fascinating in terms of what he has seen on the ground, which is just real enthusiasm for President Trump. And those are committed voters, right? Those are people who are going to go to the polls no matter what, no matter the weather, no matter what's going on with COVID in the area. So that's hard to beat.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be a turnout election. Like, first of all, they're all turnout elections, but this one is going to be all about turnout in a handful of states, right?
I'm glad you said that.
Yeah.
Because Carlo, I feel like every election we're like, this election all about turnout. It's like the go-to line for any political reporter, and it's like, no, they're all about turnout. Okay.
Totally.
New York City. And I did that myself. This is not making fun of political reporters.
No.
I was a political reporter for many years. I feel like that was my go-to line as well. New York City, by the way, having to close some schools and non-essential businesses in 9 zip codes in Brooklyn and Queens that are seeing a resurgence in cases. These new lockdowns take effect Wednesday, pending sign-off from the governor.
Yeah. So if you follow politics in New York, this is kind of interesting, just because Bill de Blasio, our mayor, essentially forcing Governor Cuomo's hand here by announcing these new lockdowns without telling him first. Which, of course, if they're going to have to close some schools, that's a disaster for parents, obviously. But I think the upshot is at least they're doing this in a targeted way, right? It's not these are not widespread, lockdowns and shutdowns. So hopefully it'll help. And if we can sort of like stem the cases in these few neighborhoods, maybe that can show us how we can get through the fall and the winter with these sort of like targeted, really surgical plans from the government. But nationally, Jill, the highest rate of infections now coming from some of the least populous states. It's sort of interesting, right? We had we obviously had the Northeast surge in the spring. Then we had kind of like the Sun Belt surge in the summer. And now we're getting this, so like kind of like the Great Plains surge of the fall. Montana, Wyoming, the Dakotas, all seeing really worrisome numbers. The U.S. reported 54,000 new cases on Friday. That is not good. That's the largest total in 2 months, though we should note that daily deaths have remained relatively steady around the 900 level, which, again, obviously not good, but a little bit better than they had been.
And on a lighter note, I mean, I know that you mentioned, for people who aren't from New York, if you think that Carlo and potentially me, that our attacks on the federal government are exclusive to the president, the dysfunction in New York between the governor and the mayor of New York City it's like you cannot write it.
It's like a sitcom. It's a sitcom, basically.
It is like a sitcom. It's like the mayor will announce something, and then an hour later the governor comes out and says, "Nah, that's my decision." It's bonkers.
It's truly bananas.
Okay. On a more serious note, overseas, an attack on a Jewish student leaving synagogue in Germany during Sukkot, which is an important holiday for the Jewish people, is raising some new jitters about an increase in anti-Semitism in the country. There has been a 3-fold increase in anti-Semitic crimes in Germany over just the last 3 years. The most recent attack came almost a year after a synagogue shooting that killed 2 people.
Yeah, I'm glad that we're mentioning this story because it's going a little undercovered. And I think that this man who was attacked with a hammer, by the way, and this was the attacker is a known neo-Nazi. It sounds like this guy's going to recover at least. But apropos of nothing, Jill, I do get sort of scared when I think about Angela Merkel leaving office, which I believe is happening next year. She's sort of like holding the European Union together. This weekend, by the way, was the 30-year anniversary of German reunification, and another thing to mention here, the opposition party in German parliament is the AfD, which is this like really far right sort of scary group. That would be like if our House of Representatives was like literally run by the Proud Boys. So anti-Semitism in Germany is something you really gotta watch, and as you said, the trend is not encouraging.
As is anti-Semitism rising, by the way, all across Europe and
Sure.
here in the
Yeah.
United States as well. Um, I'd be lying if I said, we obviously didn't go to Temple this year because of COVID, but I get nervous. I mean, there's armed guards outside of synagogues because of this of violence, potential violence. My daughter goes to a nursery school at a Jewish. It's at a synagogue, and there's armed guards. There have to be, and
Yeah.
it's something I think about every single day. It's very, very scary. The movie, switching gears here, the movie industry stopped in its tracks this weekend over news that Cineworld, parent of Regal, plan to temporarily close all theaters in the United States and the UK after the new James Bond movie was delayed again until next April. Cineworld says there's just not enough new releases to justify staying open, especially in major markets like New York City that are still closed.
Yeah, so the big Regal in Union Square here in New York City has a sign outside that says like, theaters have reopened in 48 states. Why not New York? But I think that even if they were reopened, I just don't know how. The fact of the matter is, the movie theater industry, Jill, it is on the precipice here. Even when they are reopened, the box office has not rebounded anywhere close to where it needs to be to ensure these exhibitors don't go out of business. Regal is the biggest chain of theaters in the United States. Keep your eye on AMC this week, maybe today or tomorrow. I suspect that they're going to follow here and just say, we cannot do this. We're just going to shut down and try and I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know if there's going to be a movie theater industry in this country in 6 months. I don't know. This is, we talk about the bars and the hospitality and industry and restaurants. At least with them, they're sort of able to get some amount of revenue from like the outdoor dining, from to go. Movie theaters, there's not like another thing they can do, right? Like you go into the theater and sit there for 2 hours. That's the business model, and buy, expensive popcorn. But if people aren't doing that for an extended period of time,
they could probably sell their popcorn. There is something about movie theater popcorn, but
it's actually not a bad
follow
idea.
what you're saying.
Yeah. So I don't know. This is a little bit worrisome too. A lot of worrisome news today, but just something to keep an eye on.
Okay, and on a lighter note, the SNL season premiere was this weekend. It featured the first appearance of Jim Carrey as Joe Biden. Chris Rock hosted. Megan Thee Stallion performed. Carlo, I watched on Sunday.
Did you?
But I did watch the
I was
whole
going to
thing.
say, did you stay up? No way. When was the last time you stayed up to watch Saturday Night Live?
I don't know. I haven't seen like 11 p.m. on a clock in a long time.
I did watch, actually. I watched yesterday. It was okay. I thought Jim Carrey was okay, but I wasn't like taken with his Joe Biden. It felt like Jim Carrey doing a Joe Biden impression, if that makes sense. Look, I think we've said this before, Jill, but I mean, these guys, the SNL writers, they have like the world's hardest job. How do you even satirize this moment? Like you can't, it's not even, we're not even living in a satirizable like time. It's just the news itself is too insane, right?
I did feel like there were moments where Ace Ventura I saw Ace Ventura in in the Joe Biden impression. I will say that I liked when he put if you saw in the cold open where he took out the tape measure and then moved the podium back a little bit. I thought that was pretty funny. I thought Chris Rock and his opening bit was pretty good, his opening monologue. One line that I particularly laughed out loud at, and this is not even like a political thing per se. This isn't anything against Trump. It's funny. He says, it's time to renegotiate our relationship to the government and rethink the whole president thing. I mean, what job do you have for 4 years, no matter what? Like if you hired a cook and he was making people vomit every day, do you sit there and go, well, he's got a 4-year deal. We've just got to vomit for 4 more years. He also talked about the idea of term limits. Again, forgetting whatever side of the political spectrum you're on, and again, knowing that this is a really weird time because the president is potentially quite sick right now. I just thought that the idea behind that was funny.
Yeah. Well, I think we can all agree that Chris Rock is hilarious. I would vote for him, maybe.
So funny. For Chris Rock.
Yeah, Chris Rock for president. Can we make that happen?
He's hysterical. All right, everybody, I hope you had a nice weekend. Thanks for sticking with us and listening. That's what you need to know for Monday, October 5th.
Bye, guys.